Hello, everyone. Dr. Chris Martinson here with you. I got to talk to you about France. France on fire, and it's still going on, but maybe you haven't heard about it. So let's check this out. Look, this is just from April 3rd. France, overnight workers, protesters have blocked the oil depot at Yvelines, which is the main depot for the whole Paris region. Truckers are expected to join the protests. This is still happening. And unfortunately, tempers are frayed to the point where we're now seeing that the police are beginning to act pretty badly around this whole thing. Check this out. Watch this policeman. I'll play it a couple times. Ooh. Watch that again. Can you just do that? Can you just that person's providing no threat whatsoever. The policeman just walks up and boom, cold, just sucker punches him. Boom. All right, that's assault if you do that. And you're not a policeman, obviously. But by the time the police are acting bad like that, it tells you they're pretty cranky in this whole thing. And of course, they've had to put up with extraordinary things going on in France, including, watching this where people are now just so it's calmly eating dinner while stuff is literally burning all around them. And so the size of this, the scope of this is really extraordinary. And this has a lot of causes to it. And by the way, if you want to understand the actual causes of this, you should really read the crash course. It tells and explains why this is kind of how the world's going to be for a long time until we sort things out, because we didn't really plan appropriately for what we were going to do when, not if, but when the world was going to find itself bumping up against what it could possibly produce in terms of energy, fossil fuel energy, oil in particular. There's a whole story there: finance, the economy, plus energy, plus exponential growth. You put it in one spot and it tells you what is going on out there, and it's explanatory. So the French are getting restive because the people have rightly discovered how screwed they are in this story, and this is going to happen to people all around the world. If the police in France were smart, they would understand that they are on the same side as these protesters, because the pensions of these police, these are going to go away just as certainly as the things that the people are protesting about, which is the loss of their retirement age going from 62 to 64, right? So this is not cool. The French are being acting really sort of nasty, brutish, and short French in this story. And the police are obviously, doing what they do in these situations where they no longer display their names. It's not even clear if all of these people are actually police versus hired mercenaries, all of that. But the people peacefully got together, and then they weren't allowed to assemble peacefully. And so what happens, as John F. Kennedy said, those who make peaceful revolution impossible will make violent revolution inevitable. So that's the direction we're headed towards. And by the way, there was a really interesting thing that happened here at the Battle of Saint-Soline, as it's called, where the police were on this field. There were a bunch of people there. They started firing a lot of tear gas. One thing led to another, and then, oops, wouldn't you know it, the people circled back around and torched all the police vehicles. So the pushback has clearly started. It's very much, the police in this story, I got to be honest, the French police, they do act badly towards their fellow countrymen. I don't know how you live with yourself, because you're supposed to be there to protect people, not to beat them up, right, and all that. But the police don't seem to understand that their own pensions, their own lives are in the same camp as the people who are protesting. Right? The police should really just turn this whole thing around and be with the people, not against them, if they really understood that they're both rats in a cage at this point in time. That's all I see when I see this going on. These are rats in a cage. The police don't understand really what's happening here at a deep enough level, because if they did, they would be on the same side as the protesters. The protesters are often fighting the police, rats in a cage, and because they're all being shocked by this thing that's happening, which is that, the party's over. Now we're down to the hard part of this story, and we're about to face a pretty extraordinary financial calamity. And so what we really need to see is some thoughtful, sophisticated, caring, decent leadership, and that is not what we see in Macron, who is, people are tired of this. They're tired of this. They're tired of this, the carelessness of the so-called elites, you know. They have big fancy words, but when you boil everything away, what they're really saying is, listen, there's not enough for everybody to have what they want, and we want everything, and you little people are in our way, so how about if we take more from you so we can have more, right? It's really gross, it's really awful, and it's not very helpful. By the way, as all of this stuff is going on, what I'm talking about in part 2 for my subscribers back at Peak Prosperity is that there's these extraordinary things happening outside of the United States right now, which includes China's huge diplomatic coups in the Middle East, in particular, OPEC cutting oil production, India trading in rupees, Brazil trading in yuan. Russia conducted more trade recently in yuan, the Chinese currency, than in dollars. While all of that's happening, the United States is pretty well distracted by the idea that, you know, the Country Music Awards here are now partnering with the gun control group and having drag queens on his carpet. And Bud Light hired Dylan. I think that's Dylan is the name there, right? Yeah. Yeah. The Trump indictment, et cetera, et cetera. So basically a lot of noise on the inside and huge, giant things happening on the outside. If you want to come check that out, check out a membership at Peak Prosperity because it's big what's going on. Now, meanwhile, while this stuff is happening in France, let's check in on the coverage in the media about this. Oh, no front page articles on Google News, nothing on Yahoo News, nothing on CNN, nothing on Reuters, New York Times, Wall Street Journal, WAPO, HuffPo, BBC, NBC, even France's own N24 station, only 3. These are millions and millions of people that are protesting, and they've been doing it for a long time, and they are now basically shutting the country down, and it's not newsworthy. You want to know why? Because they don't want you knowing about it. It's not that it's not newsworthy. It totally is. There's human interest, there's drama, there's violence, there's emotions. It's obviously newsworthy, but not to these people right here, because these are not interested in giving you the context you need to understand what's actually going on in the world. Sorry to say it, but just how it is. Meanwhile, 149 police are now listed as inactive because here's a picture, a screenshot, a still from a video. Police got knocked out. Somebody threw something, clonked the police guy or gal on the head, and they're now being carted away. So I have to wonder how many of those 149 police who are inactive are acting that way because their heart really isn't in it. You know, hey boss, I think my back hurts. I'm not interested in going out with you and clubbing old people today. You know, it happens sometimes. So, but at any rate, it's clearly happening and breaking apart for France. And the shots I've seen of just millions and millions of people, it stirs my heart. I'm really glad to see the people of France standing up. I wish my own countrymen would stand up more like this. I'm really proud of the truckers, honk honk, in Canada for what they did. I'm really disappointed in how the communist, authoritarian, whatever you want to call it, government of Trudeau and Chrystia Freeland, how they just crushed, you know, their own country people. Same story in Australia, right? So to watch, it's time for people to say, we need to rise up on this whole thing. I mean, if not now, when, right? So the people of France are leading the way. They're showing us how it's done. And the idea now that they are doing like this is how you get it done right here. They've blocked an oil depot, right? Which is one of the main depots for the whole of the Paris region. Now that's going to have an impact. And so why would I suggest that that's a good thing to be doing here? It's to, you know, something like this. Well, it's because of this one statement right here, which is this one. If you sit there and you write a letter and nothing happens, if you go out on the street and make your voice heard and nothing happens, if you petition for redress, nothing happens. If you show up by the thousands and thousands and nothing happens, if you show up by the millions and nothing happens, what are you supposed to do? What's left? What is left? Well, the people of France, I think, are leading the way on that. It shouldn't have to be that way. It really shouldn't. But sometimes I guess that's just the nature of being part of things. And those who want things to be different, you have to be willing to risk something, put something on the line to make it different. But I would invite you to scour the news, see what you can find out about France, but there is an extraordinary story developing there. And of course, there's a whole group of media who don't necessarily want you to know anything about that story. All right, thanks very much for listening. If you want to hear more about what I think about what's going on in the world, come to peakprosperity.com, join, get a membership, find your tribe, hit like, hit subscribe, do whatever you can to help share this message, because it is time, people. It's time. Be safe, plant a garden, and remember, it didn't have to be this way.
The beauty of saying it's an emergency is very difficult to challenge any of this stuff.
Our wealth is being stolen via our money.
I would have never come here if I thought it was lost. I know we can